Paul Comessotti. Hello, we are live. How are you, man?
I'm well, Eddie. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever we are in the world. And this will sit in the archive forever, so it'll be a good day. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting a new show at Checkpoint called Talking to Checkpoint, kind of a behind-the-scenes look at the people that make the magic happen. And since this is a new show, I wanted a special guest for the very first show. This gentleman in front of me here, Paul Comessotti, was my first hiring manager at Checkpoint. Paul, 15, maybe even 16 years ago. Wow. And we've already got one of your fans dialing in, I think, because I don't know who Ali, do you know who Ali Mockaberry is? Greetings from Toronto. Do you know Ali?
Not off the top of my head.
All right. Well, Ali, thanks for jumping in, man. So I am a proud Canadian citizen. Paul is a Canadian living in Calgary, Canada. I lived there for many, many years. And that's when Paul initially hired me. And hello, who have we got? Robert, greetings from Germany. Robert from Germany, I only know 3 German words, my friend, okay? I'm going to give you my 3 German words. Paul's going to laugh because having managed me for probably a good decade, he'll roll his eyes at this. But Robert, when I was 19 years old, a friend and I decided we would cycle around Germany. And I thought, well, we don't know any other language, so you should learn, give me a beer, and I'll learn, ich liebe dich, I love you. And between the two of us, a couple of 19-year-olds cycling around Germany, we're going to have a great time. So there we are. We've got folks dialing in from Serbia. Thank you very much, Alexandra Kosik. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Alexandra, from Serbia. We have here also from India, greetings, Siddiq from India. It's a big international crowd because Paul Comessotti is Canadian. As you can tell by my deft Bronx accent, I live in New Jersey, but I am a Canadian and a Brit. Greetings from Nigeria. Thanks for dialing in from Nigeria. And also from India again, Navjot. I hope I'm pronouncing that one correctly and doing you justice there, my friend. Most important words, exactly, Robert. Ich liebe dich, and give me a beer during Oktoberfest. Now, Paul, living in Calgary, you compete with Oktoberfest in Germany with your Calgary Stampede, right?
That's absolutely correct. Big rodeo that happens every July, and much like Oktoberfest, my wife lived in Munich for a number of years. And so we do Stampede in July and then Oktoberfest in October in Munich, and just a tremendous experience. Got to learn the culture, be engaged with everything that's happening. Just a truly great time that we enjoyed.
Yeah, well, what I really enjoyed about Stampede is a 10-day really shabackle of you've got to wear cowboy boots, cowboy hat, cowboy shirt. And the first time I was at a Stampede corporate party was actually the one that Paul was organizing. Although I do remember you giving me a lot of the duties getting that thing organized, Paul. You were passing the baton. I think for a good decade you had held on to that, and it actually was very well known. Like the Checkpoint Stampede party was kind of one of the big parties to be at. But we would fly people from all over North America to come up to these events. They would start at 8 a.m. You'd have rodeo. I think it's the only other $1 million purse for the bull riding rodeo. And it's a spectacular cultural event. We brought customers up, of course, and our vice presidents to come in and speak with customers at the same time. And this is kind of what this little show is about right now. We've got people coming in from all over the world, and we would try to congregate at that Stampede so that we could exchange ideas. So let's start with that, Paul. We've been together for what, 15, 16 years now at Checkpoint. I had a little hiatus to do a startup in Silicon Valley and quickly came back because I'll tell you, there is a lot of, for a family man like me with children in university, there's a lot of great stability at Checkpoint. It really is a family kind of company. It really is from that cultural standpoint. It's unusual, right? For a technology company that generally sees headcount turnover every 2 to 3 years. You've been with the company how many years now?
I just celebrated my 20th anniversary of my start date last week.
Wow. Congrats, man. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there's quite a few people that have that kind of tenure at this organization. And I've got to hand it to the boss, right? Our founder, who's also really one of the founding fathers of cybersecurity, Gil Shwed, who's kept the head office in Israel and kept just that beautiful culture of, hey, this is family. And in times where the dot-com crash happened, in times where the big economic meltdown of 2007, 2008 happened, never laid off a person. Even in the tough areas like Detroit, when cars weren't selling during those years, we kept our team members. So I've really appreciated that about the company, and as I say, I'm a boomerang. I came back.
No, and it was great to have you back. And that was the thing we talked about when you were deciding to make that move. And one of the management philosophies many of us have, to have people want to be successful, you can't stand in their way, whether that be an internal or an external move. And we were happy for you that it was a challenge you wanted to take on to join a startup, and watching you take off and do that. It was sad to lose you, but we were excited when you came back, and we made it work as quickly as possible when you became available again. And that you bring new experiences, and that's how you've transitioned from being a salesperson in Western Canada, and when you ran the business for us out here, and then transitioning to your new roles and your new activities in the United States. It's been great progress.
Well, and the other thing that I think that we've been afforded the opportunity at Checkpoint is to move around within the organization. I mean, your tenure is fantastic, Paul. And I actually want to go back to before Checkpoint days, because as an entrepreneur, you had the experience of building a tech company back in, I think, pre-dot-com boom days. Tell us a little bit about that, and tell us about how that skill set translated into the multiple roles and responsibilities that you've had to build the Checkpoint business from.
Yeah, certainly. So coming out of university, I got my first tech employment in a very large U.S. integrator called EDS, Electronic Data Systems. It had been spun out of General Motors. It had previously been owned by a gentleman in the United States named Ross Perot. It was large, big conglomerate systems integrator. And in my time there, we had great success, but we weren't able to handle niche markets very well. And so myself and some other key individuals left EDS at the time and started our own reselling business and started our own integration, and really took off and grew wildly over a number of years. And what was interesting at that time is you could very much still do business on a handshake. And, we were doing everything, starting it up from scratch. I was vice president of sales. I was chief shipper, moving boxes around our very small warehouse. We're negotiating pricing. We're negotiating real estate. It was a lot of fun. And that entrepreneurial type of spirit, I captured that. But I couldn't believe how much you had to work at it. Everyone thinks being a business owner is just taking your time and relaxing. And it was a breakneck speed, 7/24, making payroll. Sometimes large customers wouldn't pay in the net 30, and it was very difficult. We were having to take personal finance loans to make payroll for our staff. Very, very stressful.
Yeah.
And then, leaving that and coming to Checkpoint, the nice thing is I was able to bring all of those entrepreneurial type of energies and activities and thoughts. And I will tell you that I don't miss worrying about making payroll for our staff. With Checkpoint and the strong financial position our company's in, being able to do all of those unique entrepreneurial things and not worry about things like finance, wow, what a difference.
It brings on an interesting point that most people don't examine deeply when they select their cybersecurity vendor, which is this: you do need a company that has a very healthy bottom line. So, we keep a fair bit of money on the bank. We're a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ under CHKP. So you can look at us, Checkpoint CHKP on the NASDAQ, and see our financials. And you'll see that we have quite a bit of money in the bank, as it were, to the tune of over $1 billion, $2 billion. And I remember asking Gil once, many years ago, I think actually for my new hire orientation out in Tel Aviv, saying, we keep a lot of money in the bank, right? Why is that? Out of interest. Talk to me about the business side. He said, well, look, it does a couple of things. Number one, it makes me a harder acquisition target for, you know, an aggressive takeover in the public stock market. You know, we have no desire at Checkpoint to be part of another massive organization. We're purists. We love security. This is our play. But the other reason I thought this was brilliant, I can float the whole company on interest if I have to and make payroll. Now, that to me is fantastic because you as a customer, when crisis happens, let's say international financial crisis takes place, you want to make sure that your security vendor is still right on top of the button. You know, we process, 86 billion indicators of compromise every single day. We need to make sure that we're not, you know, in a position where staff is needed to keep up with the times. You know, we're right on top of that. So then tell me, Paul, that kind of skill set must have come right into your roles at Checkpoint. So tell me a little bit about, you know, give us your Checkpoint story, actually. Let's start there.
Sure. In 2001, I joined the team. Actually, kind of a funny story about the family and the interpersonal relationships. I got to Checkpoint because my college roommate back from University of Victoria in the early 90s had joined Checkpoint. And, being an integrator, security in the early 90s wasn't necessarily front of mind like it is today. Not even close. It was so far back. When I left Max and joined Checkpoint, people are like, security, what's that? So my college roommate got me into the company. And we worked together in Western Canada for a number of years. He ultimately left and decided to become a pilot. And so he flies passengers and cargo. He had a great deal flying around the Maldives as an air taxi pilot. That sounds like it would be really good after selling software for a number of years. But joined as a sales team member in Western Canada. And
oh, you broke up a bit there, Paul.
Okay, hopefully you got me there.
Yeah.
Perfect. After 4 to 5 years of being on the sales team, one of my mentors, a gentleman by the name of Steve O'Neill, moved on to do a joint MBA in the United States. And so he left the company, and I took his place as the Canadian sales manager. And so the territory expanded for me from the Western Canadian provinces to all of Canada. And did that for 10 years. And you talked about it, the more things change, the more they stay the same. But being able and willing to adapt to change. So after doing the country management role for 10 years, our vice president at the time, a gentleman by the name of Bob O'Keefe, who Eddie, you know very well, he wanted to reinvigorate the channel. And so he took selective people from around the company to come up with new ways to reinvigorate our channel business. And so therefore I moved from just handling the Canadian business as a whole into the United States, working with a team of a number of different individuals like John Norco and other friends, Doug Reasoner, Tony Sabai, and reinvigorating our channel strategy. And did that for a number of years. And then again, being adaptive to change, we had an executive shuffle when Bob O'Keefe retired. A new executive came in, brought more individuals to the company. And next thing you know, I'm on the team that has all of the Americas with exception of the United States. So I had Canada, Latin America, Central America in terms of operations and supply chain and those types of things. Did that for a couple of years. And now we've consolidated back just into the Canadian business where I've been for the last couple of years. So to your point, having the opportunity to experience different aspects of the business across many regions, although I am nowhere near a fluent Spanish speaker, being able to be involved in the business in Latin and Central America, South America and Central America was a wonderful experience. Made some great friendships there with new people. But also what was interesting is they had to do business differently in those markets. And, the same way that the North American market is considered to be a single market, Canada has very different idiosyncrasies than the United States. But in Latin America, doing business in Colombia was very different than doing business in Mexico or Brazil. And being able to see those market dynamics actually helped us here in Canada, because we saw they would structure deals differently. They would be involved in using the technology, not necessarily as we inspired it when we developed it, but they would make it work for their markets. And so that flexibility, looking at those entrepreneurial things that were happening in different markets, was an advantage for me, but advantageous to us consolidating back into Canada.
Yeah, what were some of those challenges? Because obviously exchange rate would be one, and the exchange rate in some of those Latin American countries just fluctuates massively, right? So, how do you overcome some of that? We got somebody from Colombia. Let's just do a quick hello. I'm afraid I've just got LinkedIn user. I can't see who you are. I don't have it streaming on the other side, but that's great. And we also have Stephanie, greetings from Colombia. There we are.
Yes.
These are colleagues of yours or customers or...
Well, you remember I talked about just a couple minutes ago about people I really enjoyed working with and got to meet. Stephanie Escamilla, one of my top favorite people to work with in the South America. She just recently got a promotion. Nice. She is handling the English Caribbean for Checkpoint, and she had joined as a channel manager. Angelo Valentini and I had worked with her in the channel capacity. So congratulations to Stephanie on a excellently and well-deserved promotion.
And look, anyone that has the Caribbean as a territory is like, that's the territory I want. Are you really working? We're going to tease you there, Stephanie, but I'm sure that's a wonderful territory for you. And interesting, this run out of Colombia as well. But yeah, I mean, how did you handle all those fluctuating exchange rates, those kinds of things? I mean, the quoting system must have been completely different.
Actually, not a lot different. The way we handled it is partnerships. Our partnerships with our supply chain was critical to overcome those challenges, because it's impossible for one organization to do everything for everyone. But getting into those regions and using organizations, our resellers, our distributors, our supply chain was immensely valuable for us in having, a global company, but able to act and react locally. And significant partnerships is the way we got it done.
Yeah, you know what? That's the thing, that in the 15, 16 years I've been at Checkpoint, and I'm sure the 20 you have been, Checkpoint's always had that we go to the partnership. There is no direct mechanism. There's never been a time where we say, oh, this is a $20 million piece of business, we'll go direct. Cisco tends to pull that stunt once in a while, and a couple of others. We've never done that. And I think what that's created is it's created the relationship that you've just mentioned, where partners are willing to take on risk for us and our partnership in this case, and manage these kinds of additional things for us, where that traditionally would have been a lot harder for us, let's say. Yeah, and North Carolina jumping in. All right, hello, North Carolina LinkedIn user. Thank you for joining us here. Where was I going to go with that, Paul? I was going to talk. Oh yeah, I was going to say about Latin America that whenever I've done a keynote down there, those guys know how to put on a party. It's just that the tech events in Latin America very colorful. It makes our pink logo fit in. Finally, right? We've had that wonderful pink logo for 25 years, and it fits really well in Latin America. But they have these amazing light shows, and when you get up on stage to speak, you kind of think, I feel like a rock star up here.
Yeah, and that's funny you mentioned that, because that's one of the things we took away. We did a Checkpoint experience, what we commonly refer to as CPX. We did one after we had been involved in South America and Central America, and we did it in Montreal. And in order to get that same kind of flash, that same kind of excitement, we did it at the Cirque du Soleil practice arena.
Wow!
And it was very well done. But to your point, the country manager now, Ron Decker, he came down almost like on a trapeze into the crowd. So that was actually quite funny. So we took it to the next level. But exactly what we pulled from our business associates in Central and South America.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What about shipping down there? Is that because I know you were involved in that for a while? I mean, it's again, Checkpoint's wonderful. It's like roll up the sleeves and here's a whole other responsibility. And I loved you mentioning, those most adaptable to change, the whole Darwinian quote. Yeah, these are the ones that become stronger and survive. But yeah, so what about shipping? Any differences there compared to, let's say, the US or the rest of the world? You're laughing.
Well, no, I mean, there's an interesting story there because, we ship essentially from 3 warehouses. We have our manufacturing partnerships in Taiwan. We ship from there. We have a warehouse in Israel, and then we have warehouses in the United States. And the reason I chuckle is because, the biggest challenge I've had with logistics, and our logistics team has been very supportive, was 18 months ago at the start of the pandemic, where we had a number of clients that were looking to receive products for their end of quarter, end of year for March 30th. Canadian government year end, key financial institutions. A lot of organizations really look to have things delivered on site for the 30th of March. And of course, that was just as the pandemic was starting really to spin up last year. And so we had moved much of inventory from the warehouse in Taiwan to the United States in anticipation that our customers were going to need these things, and the pandemic was potentially going to slow down. And again, at that point, it was potentially only going to slow down our route and delivery to market. Well, fast forward 1 week to 10 days, and the United States completely shut down. Our stuff in California, just as the pandemic was really ramping up there, they had the shelter in place. And so staff wasn't getting to warehouses, and you couldn't ship things within the United States. And so what we ended up having to do was reload, if you will, and ship things from Taiwan into Canada to meet our customer demand, because we had inventory trapped in the United States. And our logistics team and our sales team as a whole was exceptional, and our customers were understanding. But in almost every single one of those cases, we were able still to deliver in such a unique situation, logistically deliver to our Canadian customers and our American customers, because, like I said, we couldn't get it out of California into North Carolina, for example, but we could get it from Taiwan into North Carolina. So yeah, it was something else. But we will probably never see that again. But the rate at which our teams were able to flex, and our customers were understanding, and our partnerships were strong, we overcame a tremendous hurdle.
And the practice for overcoming those hurdles. Do you remember the Vancouver Olympics in 2010? So, whenever there's government money or whenever there's public money kind of involved in something, people are careful. But I knew exactly what was going to happen. And you and I were talking about this. Yes. So for the context, ladies and gentlemen, Paul's my manager. Vancouver is part of my Western Canadian territory. So we won the Olympic bid to be the security provider for the Olympics. So, okay, great. We're talking, Visa card transactions, all those credit cards. I mean, all of the servers, the streaming, because streaming in 2010 was starting to become a thing where people were streaming the Olympics everywhere. So we better get this right. And I remember you and I talking a lot about this, and it was 3 weeks before the Olympics, and these poor guys still couldn't get us the PO. A lot of bureaucracy. It's the Olympics, right? I mean, there's so many signatures are involved. And then finally, just under 3 weeks, and what was it, 42 devices had to be basically assembled, put together all the parts. It was quite unique. I remember a lot of the spec from our engineers was quite unique, assembled, shipped, and installed during a brownout period for the Olympics that, was about 2.5 weeks. Got it done, but I think just perhaps as the first Olympian was going off of the ski jump, that's when everything got turned on. And you might remember also at the very last minute they said, "Oh yeah, and we need a couple of people too." And so we had to move people into Vancouver at the last minute to try and make sure that they had security management capabilities for the whole term of the Olympics as the tenure went. And they're like, "Hey, can you give us a person?" And it's like, "Sure we can, but we don't think there's anywhere for this person to stay." And so the scramble became, where would we house those resources? Because,
hotels had been booked for months and years, and
Right.
and hey, I need a place during the Vancouver at the Olympics at the last minute. Oh, how much is that going to cost? You're not getting any deals.
Maybe we just put them at a friend's house. I can't remember now. But see, this is what I mean about this show being a behind the scenes look. This is the stuff you have to do. So you at the time, I think, the director for Canada, trying to figure out, I've got a mate that lives kind of close to this area. Can he stay on your floor? Right.
Exactly.
Fantastic. We've got a greeting from a country or a place I can't pronounce. So I just want to throw it up because I think that's fantastic. Okay. So for Anthricad, can you jump in again, Binoy, and tell us where you're from to prevent me from just Googling it as we're chatting here? Because that's really cool to learn something new. So that was good fun. The 2010 Olympics, and for those that know Paul on this stream here, you'll know he's a hockey nut. He's Canadian, obviously. So, do you still play hockey? Because the last time we I was living in Calgary, you were playing hockey regularly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't play as much anymore. I almost had a sales career limiting move where, you're out there playing with a bunch of guys, and in hockey, there's a kind of a unique thing that happens. If you're trying to inhibit someone else from taking a shot, you kind of reach in with your stick sometimes when you shouldn't. And oddly enough, sometimes the puck comes right up your stick, right up your arm, and hits you in the face. And I almost had a couple of teeth knocked out, which, if you're in sales and you're, not a super young fellow like myself, nothing like rolling up to your sales calls missing a couple of teeth.
Yeah, exactly. It's a heck of a rough sport, hockey is. It's one of the roughest in the world. But I remember during the 2010 Olympics, right up to the final in hockey, Canada and the US got to the final. Do you remember this? And Paul was so excited, you thought, to hell with it. Got in your car and you drove 12 hours to Vancouver so you could watch it in a bar in Vancouver and just be part of that energy. And hey, my American friends, I'm with you. I'm a green card American citizen, as it were. But I will say, so tell us about that game, Paul, because that was an amazing overtime. Do you remember that? Everybody in Canada, our hearts sunk as the US tied it up. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, and it's one of those events that you remember where you were when it happened.
Right. And
what was interesting is that I jumped in the car. One of our coworkers at the time, he was originally from Sweden, and he was living in Ottawa, and the Ottawa Senators had a captain. His name was Daniel Alfredson. And he was on the Swedish national team at the Olympics. And Canada was on a collision course to play Sweden in the semifinals. And so this gentleman said to me, hey, if you can get to Vancouver, I can probably get you a ticket to get to the semifinals. And I think I was in the car 10 minutes later. And I had the family. Like I brought my wife, my 3 kids. Off we went, suddenly to Vancouver to maybe catch the game. And the unfortunate thing is that Sweden was expected to win in order to play Canada in the semifinal round, and they lost. And so we're on the way to Sweden. We're on the way to Vancouver, anticipating we'll get tickets, and Sweden didn't make the game. And so now we're in Vancouver. And so that's how I ended up watching the final in a. It wasn't a bar in Vancouver. They had these viewing sites. A very popular thing for Canada during the Olympics is called Canada House, where Canadians, athletes, citizens all congregate, to watch the Olympics, to share stories, what have you. Well, when they're in Canada, everywhere is a Canada House, but they would have these tents, like these very large tents in public parks, and have big TVs and such, and it was actually just a big party, like we talked about earlier with Stampede, and so we ended up watching the game there. Canada wins in overtime. One of my all-time favorite players digs the puck out of the corner. He's a grinder, but he was also a tremendous goal scorer, but he didn't even score the goal. Jerome McGinley played for the Calgary Flames, my team, for many, many years, and he passed it out from the corner to a gentleman that is widely known as one of the all-time best hockey players since Wayne Gretzky, a gentleman by the name of Sidney Crosby, scores the goal, and the city of Vancouver went bananas. Like, it just erupted. And so, we're there with our kids, and our kids in 2010 were, like 12, 10, and 8. And we're in this big tent. Everyone's erupting. And it kind of startled our youngest. And so it was very clear that, we were great. We watched it, enjoy the celebration, but probably best to make sure no one got trampled that was 8 and moved to the back. And then we just jumped in the car and drove home, 12 hours home. But a unique thing. And again, that was the furthest I was thinking about, hey, actually, we're securing these Olympics. I was worried about securing my family and making sure no one got trampled.
Well, luckily that didn't get trampled, nor did anybody manage to break into the Olympics. So I think we did a good job all around, the Canadian team and the Canadian team. That's good fun. So you are a sporting man, talking about, pucks traveling up a stick and maybe knocking your teeth out. I hope you're okay with this, man, but I want to get a little more personal because you played, you're like, oh, too late, it's live.
Yeah, exactly.
You played a real rough sport in high school. You played lacrosse.
Yes.
Again, one of the other toughest games out there. And you're a man that's overcome the odds, Paul, right? Really. I mean that sincerely. And I think most people probably don't know this. You're a fully healthy, functioning man what happened to you in your lacrosse sport?
Well, in the provincial championships in Saskatchewan, where I was in a boarding school, it's a hockey school, but we all played a number of different sports. It's amazing. You can be really good at some sport and then go to a place where there's more people that specialize in something, and then you realize very quickly you're not the best. So a very small town south of Regina called Wilcox, Saskatchewan, was a boarding school that was founded in the early 1900s by a Catholic priest named Athol Murray. And so I found myself out there for my high school years in Canada. Grade 9, 10, 11, and 12 was high school. And in grade 12 at the provincial championships, I had my neck broken during the lacrosse provincials. And, it's interesting with all the things you see in today's sports, concussions, and a real awareness of these things. I was lying in the middle of the field, and then, one of the teachers had to pile me into the car while someone held my neck as still as possible while we drove to the Regina Plains Hospital on the southeast side of Regina. It's the kind of the funny story there is that my dad, who was living in Calgary, of course, because I was at boarding school, we phoned him from the hospital. And they said, I was pretty looped up on some painkillers, and so I phoned my dad. He's like, "Hey, how'd the game go?" I said, "Oh, yeah, Dad, I broke my neck." "Good for you," he says. And Dad, I broke my neck. "Oh yeah, did you guys win the game?" And and he was busy at work, and so I'm like, "Okay, bye." And the nurse says, "What do you say?" He said, "Well, good for me." So they phone him back. It's like, "Hi, this is Dr. Such and Such from the Regina Plains Hospital. Your son is here. He's got a fracture of the C7 vertical." My dad was just thought I was telling, "Yeah, I really busted it. We went, we did well." Yeah. And so he felt guilty for about 30 seconds, but that's a great story. But and fully recovered, because when you do break your neck, it's alarming. They're fitting you for a halo collar and going to put bolts in your head and have you standing up like this for quite a while. And but like everything else, the body heals and you recover. No paralyzation, a lot of tingling and stuff in my legs. I was very, very fortunate. A lot of other people aren't as fortunate with sporting related injuries to the neck. But yeah, I was able to find my way out of that one.
I tell you, Paul, it's these stories, rough stories. It's funny. The people I like the most in life are usually the ones that have suffered. It's a strange thing. It's an observation I'm making at this age, right? We're middle aged now. It's kind of interesting. For the first time in my life, I've got more time behind me than I do in front of me. Do you know what I mean? I've crossed that precipice, and you start to make these observations just because you have experience. And it's so true that, people who have done what you say, adaptable to change, typically tend to be the most interesting people, right? And I think that's, And I remember you saying that to me in the early days, right? As you were coaching me into my role as my first time in cybersecurity. I was a former English teacher, and I'd been in sales for maybe 6 or 7 years by that point in various technology, 2 or 3 technology roles. And remember you coaching me on, you just got to get back up every time. And I just remember that. It was just, it's just numbers. Just keep calling people, keep knocking on doors. And every time somebody rejects you, just go back again. And as long as you keep standing up, you can't be beaten. That's kind of interesting, right?
Absolutely. So many people are paralyzed by the fear of rejection, and whether it be in their personal lives or professional lives, people, what they won't do because someone might say no, this I will pivot for you here, because that mentality that you've had in your sales life, in my whole tenure of working period, not just a Checkpoint, but I know that you did something that I will never see ever happen again, in that you almost got arrested acquiring new customers.
Yes, I remember that. And now you're just gonna leave it right there?
There's a story to be told, and if I tell it, I won't do it justice.
So there So I'm going to paint a fair bit of background to this, because I have some interesting thoughts about the whole conferencing model. Now, we are hosted at conferences, Checkpoint, and for customers watching this in the archive or watching this live right now, I think a good shortcut to learning about many different technologies in one day is to go to a trade show. I get that. So you got the black hats and the RSAs, the big ones, right? And then we have our own show called the Checkpoint Experience. We have it in 3 different cities across the world for our international ones. So Bangkok usually for Asia, either kind of New Orleans, Las Vegas for the Americas, and then usually around Vienna, something like that for Europe and Africa. And we'll typically bring in 4,000 or 5,000 people. This year, obviously, we did it virtually, so I think we had 16-ish thousand people registered for virtual. But typically, we're on planes and we host these conferences. And then, of course, all our competitors and our frenemies have these conferences too. So conferences is kind of a, if the conference wasn't there, you would still be able to figure out the technologies by going one-on-one with individuals and different vendors. But these conferences get put together, and I'm telling you, some of them are not just tens of thousands of dollars for vendors to pay for. Some are hundreds of thousands. I mean, some conferences in Asia, way over $100,000. Conferences in the US, several $100,000. So we're kind of selective about the conferences that we sponsor, because that's a lot of money. Again, you can look at our financials, since we're a publicly traded company, and we pour a lot of money into engineering, a lot less into marketing. So one particular conference we hadn't paid for. So this was a conference that Paul's referring to. And let me just say hello to a couple of people. We've got Saudi Arabia joining in. So pleased that you've joined us today. And we've also had Angola join in for us today. Thank you for joining us. And I'm sure you folks as well have the same thing. You've got these big conferences. So one conference where, I don't know, I might have begged Paul for the money to get into the conference, but he has, a limited budget himself. And so he would have, no, go figure it out, Doyle. So I did figure it out by walking straight into the conference. So I walked into this conference purely because I wanted to meet people, and there were thousands of people there. I had a stack of business cards in my pocket, and I was going to get rid of every single one of them. And I was going to meet as many people as I could. But I didn't have the lanyard, the big telltale sign that this man does not belong. And so rather cheekily, I walked into the conference with a smile on my face. You can be surprised what a smile on your face does. And for look, Social Engineering 101. Right? Right. We're in the cybersecurity business. I know how to social engineer for good, I will say. We also have about 300 or 400 what we call offensive cyber operators that hack the hackers in our Tel Aviv office for good. These are the white hat guys. And so I socially engineered my way into this conference. But after a little while, security would have seen, he doesn't have the lanyard, and politely asked me to walk out. And I sort of did a big circle and walked back in again, continuing to give out my business cards because I still had them in my pocket. And then I got caught again. It's like, sir, we've already and I might have made a round 3 as well. And then by this point, I was being manhandled out of the auditorium and thought, okay, yeah, this one I better stay out now, because I don't think, Paul, as much as you might be finding accommodation for our colleagues in Vancouver, you're not going to be bailing me out of a jail cell anytime soon. So
not without good phone video of it.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Because it's, and I like to say this, as a former teacher coming into the sales profession, it's not sales at any cost, but it is sales at great cost, right? So it's just roll up your sleeves, and if you're knocked down, keep walking. If you get knocked down, get back up. It's a wonderful profession, and I actually love to say at the time too that sales is one of the few professions that if you improve yourself as a human being, you can improve your bottom line. What I mean by that is people love to buy from decent people, right? We're all nauseated by that image of a used car salesman kind of person, right? The person that opens up their jacket pocket and they've got Rolex watches to sell you as well, right? We don't want that. What we want is somebody who's well-educated, explains the product, isn't pressuring you, but is tenacious at the same time. These are qualities of a great human athlete. And so if you can not perfect, but if you can work on these kinds of things, and I did all the Stephen Covey training, that's aging me, of course, training back in the day in order to improve things. And hey, here's the other beautiful benefit from it. You get to meet a lot of people, and I've got relationships with customers and partners that transitioned into friendships that I'll have for life. Same with you, Paul, right? As my former manager and now my friend and colleague. So these things always transition. All right, so we might start to wrap up shortly. This is great. Let's end on an interesting note. Okay, this is a fun one. I like to do this. This is a challenge. Oh, he's like, oh no, I'm live again. I'm gonna be challenged by Eddie. He's got me.
Exactly.
So I have what I call this Mark Twain moment. So Mark Twain was the master at being able to encapsulate big thoughts into one sentence, right? Can you take a big concept and crunch it down into one? I like to use an example that I think everybody can relate to. There are so many different diets and dietary needs out there, whether it's paleo or carnivore or vegan or vegetarian or blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. And yet society is still fairly unhealthy when it comes to our eating habits. So I can encapsulate all the diets in the world, because they get so complicated, into one sentence by saying this: food doesn't grow in a cardboard box. It's a simple thing to say. So if your food is coming out of a cardboard box, it's kind of not food, right? If it grows from the ground or if it eats the ground, that's food. So I'll say to my kids, I'll say to their friends, hey, if you want to be healthy, food doesn't grow out of a cardboard box. That's it. If you can just obey that one rule alone, then you're beating probably 90% of people out there as far as their dietary, consumption. So if you were to encapsulate success as a Checkpoint employee, and I think you've probably already done it because you're talking about adaptable to change, how would you encapsulate it? Right? You've been 20 years at Checkpoint. It's a great organization to work for. We're screaming for, we're hiring so many people right now. We've got so many positions open. Technology and cybersecurity is constantly growing. The pandemic made it even more important for us to grow. So we're hiring so many. How would you encapsulate, hey, this is how you have an amazing career at a cybersecurity company, if I can put you on the spot, Paul?
Sure. For a minute there, I thought you were telling me I needed to go on a diet. So, it's difficult to encapsulate. And yes, it would have been lovely if you had given me a heads up that you're going to put me on the spot. But I think the way that you need to be successful, and this just doesn't apply to cybersecurity, it applies to every person that is in a career. Adaptive to change, yes, that's critical component of it. But you also need to have that fighting spirit, and I don't mean combativeness. I mean the ability to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and move forward, and to accept new challenges head on, and being able to battle through them. The gentleman that I work for now here at Checkpoint, Angelo Valentini, had a tremendous career, long-running career as a CFO, and now he is responsible for our channel operations here at Checkpoint in Canada. And he's got a mantra: work hard, play hard. And we do work hard, but you also have to enjoy the play time as well. So, for example, we have a team chat that right now, because of the ice hockey playoffs in the NHL, is more about showing your team and representing your team against your coworkers. But it's that fighting spirit. I mean, that chat can flip on a dime. It's like, okay, we have a problem. How are we going to accomplish this problem? And people from all corners of our team will chip in ideas, chip in time, capital, effort to be a part of something that may not necessarily directly benefit their immediate position or business. And it's that fighting spirit to pick up the rope and give it a hard tug for the benefit of others. That's what I mean when I say fighting spirit. You have to be adaptive to change because change is inevitable, but you have to have that fighting spirit to be able to pick up and pull the rope. And we've got we've had a strong team here in Canada for a number of years. We continue to add to that team, and you can see that when people will go outside of their immediate area of responsibility and bring their fighting spirit to tackle issues or to be a part of a team that's going to bring maybe a different perspective to a problem. That's what I think is critical. Now, it's not as eloquent as your example of food not coming out of a cardboard box, but that's how I would kind of classify the answer for you there.
I think it's beautiful, man, because when you pick up that rope and tug it for another team member, that's what actually leads you into another direction in life. This is what your eyes get open to other opportunities, and so I think that's a beautiful note to end on.
And it's important that you have a sense of responsibility to do the work, but you're also open and available to have some fun, even if it's self-deprecating. And the story I will end with is the story you don't want told, which is I hired this rather young, aggressive sales guy, and he said to me on day one, "I will be your best salesperson, period, by the end of the year. And when I am done, you will owe me a steak dinner." And so being the good manager that I am, I said, absolutely, I'm willing to allow that to happen. And for those listeners, the way it ended up is indeed that salesperson ended up being the top salesperson that year. And so I was aware that I was going to have to pay said steak dinner. But luckily for me, this salesperson hadn't yet experienced difficult negotiations where you have to be detail oriented.
It's all in the fine print.
It's all in the fine print. And so I sent you're probably aware by now that salesperson was Eddie Doyle. And Eddie phoned me and he wanted his steak dinner. So I simply sent him an address. I said, see you there Thursday or someday at noon.
I was so excited at last. And this was going to be my first lunch with my manager. It's my big reward.
Big reward. And so I sent him the address. He pulled up in front of the address and I get the call. He says, hey, mate, I'm here, but I think I'm in the wrong spot. I said, where are you? He goes, well, I'm currently parked in front of a Taco Bell. I said, oh, that's good. Well, come on in. And so he comes in. He's all kind of confused. He's like, mate, I don't understand. I said, steak, you're going to buy me steak because I'm the top rep. And I said, well, you weren't specific. And I feel like a burrito today. So, we'll just take the beef and the burrito and there you go. Here's your steak lunch. and your disappointment, your body language was for years.
It still hurts, Paul. I want you to know that, man. It still hurts.
you were aghast. But the two things that happened is, number one, you were very detail oriented after that in your requests. But number two is you took it for what it was. It was a great opportunity for us to have some fun and to think about your success, just not in the way you expected, but you had a great sense of humor about it, and it made for a great story for a number of individuals that is now broadcast live.
It's and it's a story that keeps on giving, and it's also the precedent that I then set as a manager moving forward. So I'll end with a little OMG from Azza. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for a little bit of fun. This was Checkpoint Behind the Curtain on the people that make the magic happen with Paul Comessotti. Paul, thanks for joining me, man. This was a fantastic dialogue. I really appreciate it.
Always my pleasure, Eddie.